right, well, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alex. I'm going to be hanging out with you here for a little bit today. So what we're going to be taking a look at here today is specifically if you are an accounting customer with Aplos, how do you enter transactions? In previous webinars, we've gone over kind of what the basics of an accounting system are, and that's typically kind of boiled down into three main functions of an accounting software. The first is to set up your accounts. So you create your chart of accounts, you create all those income and expense and asset and liability categories and all those funds that you need to keep track of things within your organization. And then the second part of any accounting software or system is to use those accounts in transactions, which what we're looking at here today. Now, the third part is being able to run reports on transactions and accounts, but that comes later. So today, let's take a look at transactions. So again, if you are an Aplos customer, specifically with the accounting product, this is going to show you how to record all types of transactions here in Aplos. So once you're logged in, if you click on accounting and then transactions right here, that will bring you to this first screen, which we call the register. Now, up at the top, you can see that you've got a choice between the register and journal entry, and then I have accounts payable and accounts receivable. These are two additional screens that you can turn on if you need them, and you can actually enable those right here from the advanced settings section. Go ahead and just turn those guys on, and then they're available here from the transaction section. So we're going to jump between all four of these screens here and show you how to enter a transaction in each one and why they're different and why you would use each one. Now, the overall information on what a transaction is, we're going to talk about a little bit here today as well. But I also wanted to let you know that there is a free resource out there for you if you are curious to learn a little bit more about what a transaction is. If you were to click on the welcome and then your org name here, and then go to the Aplos Academy, that'll take you to our Academy page where you can go to one of our free courses here, Intro to Nonprofit Accounting. Click on that. And then lesson 4 specifically goes over what is a general ledger. So the lessons before it go over what is accounting, what is fund accounting, what is a nonprofit chart of accounts, and then now how to use that chart of accounts in a general ledger. So you can watch me go through that. There I am looking goofy, and read through all the information there. So that's available for you if you'd like. But let's take a look at how this plays out in Aplos. So, okay, 4 main screens here: register, journal entry, accounts payable, accounts receivable. Let's take a look at the register first. Now, the register is the screen that you're going to use to record any transaction that has impact on your register accounts, more specifically your bank accounts and probably your credit cards. When you set up your accounts, this is mentioned in a previous webinar, but when you set up your accounts, in your asset and your liability section, you can mark an account as a register. What that means is that it shows up here. And what a register is just kind of a big long list of the transactions that have hit it. You can track your ongoing balance. And so it adds a little bit more detail to tracking that account. So at the most basic level, this is going to be your bank accounts and then any credit cards that you have set up. So I would select what account I'm working in here. So for instance, I'm going to record transactions that impact my checking account. Okay. And then scrolling down, you have this little navigation here where you can switch between bank integration, bank reconciliation, and check printing. We're going to talk about those at the very end of today, so stay tuned for that. Then you also have page options where you can customize kind of how this page looks a little bit, how many transactions show, as well as if you want to see this chart at the bottom, and if you want the entry bar at the top or the bottom of the screen. So go ahead and change those if you need to. And then here's some search criteria, but if you're not searching for anything, then don't worry about it. So as you scroll down, you're eventually going to get to this entry bar here. Now, this is where you enter an actual transaction that is going to, again, impact this register account you have selected up here. So let's see. Let's go ahead and enter an expense, right, and show you how that looks. So all you need for a transaction here is a date, a payee, an account, a fund, and then either a payment or a deposit amount. The comment and the check number field are completely optional. You don't need to enter those, so you can leave them blank if you'd like. Otherwise, you can put something in there. So let's say there's my check number, and then this is going to be as of today. And then let's say I'm going to pay Office Max. I went there to buy some supplies. Okay, so the payee is like the source or the destination of the money. It's kind of like the who and or where of the transaction. So for instance, if I went to the store and I bought something, the name of the store would be the payee. If I'm paying someone, they would be the payee. On the contrary, if you're getting money, if this is a deposit of some kind, and let's say you received a grant, from the state or something, they would be the payee. So payee doesn't necessarily mean you're paying them. It just means kind of who or what or where. So Office Max would be the payee for this transaction. And then I'm going to tab over to my account field. And the account field is now where you're going to select whatever income or expense account has relevance to this transaction. So I'm entering money that I spent. This is a transaction where I paid money. So this is a payment amount, which means I'm going to pick one of my expense accounts. So if I scroll down this list all the way down to my 5,000 numbered here accounts, then I can pick whichever one is the most applicable. So I'm going to go ahead and do office equipment. Okay. So I'm going to pick that expense account, and then right below it, you pick the fund as well. So this is not the account. You pick the account here, which is like the line item category of what type of expense or what type of income this is. And then the fund is you telling the system what fund the money is coming out of or going into if you're recording a deposit. So let's say this is coming out of my general fund, so I'll leave that there, and I'll say I bought a computer. Okay. So there's my comment. So now I've got almost everything. I've got the check number, I've got the date, which check number again is optional. I've got the date, payee, account, fund, comment, which again is optional. Now I need a payment or deposit value. So since this is money that I'm spending, it's an expense, therefore it's a payment. I'm going to go ahead and record the payment right there. So let's say I spent $1,500 on this computer. Okay, so once you have the amount, the account, the fund, the payee, the date entered, all you do is click out of here, press enter, or press tab. That transaction will automatically save and will get added to your ledger here down below. Now you can see there's the $1,500. My balance went from $9,880 to $1,500 less than that, $8,380. And so here's the list of all my transactions. And then if I scroll down here a little bit, it'll also show you what happened to my fund balances. So this is where Aplos becomes very unique in our fund accounting, is we can not only show you what's the current balance of your checking account, but what's the balance of each one of your funds within that checking account. So here I've got almost $8,400. And if I were to scroll over my little fund bars here, 3,000 of that is allocated or set aside for my building fund. 2,230 of it is for my general fund, which that was $1,500 higher before this transaction, and then $3,150 for my missions fund. So each individual fund balance within your checking account. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a deposit transaction so I can show you what that looks like as well. So let's say back on the February 25th or so, I got a grant from the state of California. All right. So this is the payee. Again, these are the people giving me money. So there's the payee. The date is the date that I received that. This is going to be a deposit. So I'm actually going to scroll down and I'm going to find an income account that applies to this transaction. So out of my income accounts here, 4,000s, grant income is where I'm looking at right there. And then I'm going to pick what fund. So let's say this is going to go into my missions fund. Okay. So this is designated money. I've gotten a grant specifically for my missions purposes. So if I deposit it into my missions fund balance within my checking account, it's going to be now set aside for that purpose. So here's the comment and then deposit amount. So let's say this was for $3,000. Okay. So again, date, payee, account, fund, amount. Press tab or press enter, click out of there. That transaction saves and everything sorts chronologically. So that transaction now gets saved before my Office Max trip. So there's 3,000, my balance went up. And then if you scroll down here to the fund chart here, you can see that my missions fund got increased significantly. So that went from $3,150 to $6,150 because of that $3,000 deposit right there. Okay, so that's your register in a nutshell. Again, any transaction that you have to enter for a bank account or a credit card, anything that you have a register set up for is going to happen here in the registers screen. All right, so let's go from the left to the right here, and next we'll go to journal entry. So journal entry, we actually have an entire webinar dedicated to the journal entry screen because this gets a lot more, sticky. It gets kind of more detailed as far as the nuts and bolts of accounting because you get into the debits and the credits of an accounting system. Now, this doesn't mean your debit and credit cards, but in accounting as a field of study, when you do transactions, when you record movements between accounts, there is a debit value and a credit value that balance each other out. Again, that kind of gets into one of those accounting classes you took 1,000 years ago. So if you are curious about that, ask us for it, or access our resources page and find that journal entry webinar. That will go into a lot more detail. So just for today, I'd like to just kind of high level tell you what journal entry is for, and maybe show you a couple things that you can do here as well. So again, journal entry is kind of the nuts and bolts of accounting. For any kind of old school person, debits and credits and journal entries are going to be very familiar. But for those of us who were not raised in that, and you've kind of learned accounting in the digital age, then software is a lot more usable for you. So on the back end of any transaction that's entered, so that Office Max transaction here, the grant income, there is a journal entry posted kind of in the nuts and bolts again of accounting for each one of these. But the difference is we've made this screen a lot easier to use, so that way you don't have to know as much about the debits and credits for you to use the system. And same with accounts payable and receivable. We have designed software, and other softwares have designed their interfaces to be very easy to use so that you don't have to do journal entries. But if there's ever a transaction that does not fit within the register or the accounts payable or the accounts receivable, then journal entry is your man. Here, you can enter the transaction here. Now, what this would typically be is a transaction that has kind of a transaction that is within two accounts. For instance, like if you're paying off, if you're doing like depreciation or something like that. So if you have a an item that you're depreciating, and so you're decreasing its value and you're just kind of adjusting its overall balance and recording some expenses, that would be the example of a journal entry. But for 99% of you, this is probably never going to be used, this journal entry screen. So some other things that you can do here that may be more practical on a daily basis are here in the left-hand menu right there. One of which is start a new fund transfer, and the other one is import payroll. Let's talk about payroll first. So at Aplos, we do not have a payroll module just yet, but you are able to record the details manually. If you'd like some help with that, we can help with that. The other option is for you to import payroll if you use a payroll system like ADP, PayCycle, or Sure Payroll. If you use them for your payroll, then they provide a type of export once you've run payroll for the period, which we can then import into Aplos to keep everything consistent. So there's one option. Another option here is to start a new fund transfer. Now, let's go back to our register here for a second. So I've got a little over $11,000 in my check register here, and a lot of the money is in my missions fund, building, and general funds. So if I wanted to take money from my building fund and put it into my general fund, how would I do that? Well, that would be through a journal entry here in the Start New Fund Transfer screen. So what I would do is I'd say transferring money from building to general. And I want to make that transfer as of the 1st. And then that's going to happen within my checking account. So you pick what kind of register or what asset or liability account you want that to happen in. And let's say I want to transfer $1,000. And that's going to go from my building fund to my general fund. Okay. Transfer. So what that does is that saves the transaction. And now if I go to my register, you can see the fund to transfer. The amount is 0. And that's because overall in your checking account, nothing happened. You still have the same amount of money. It just changed hands. It changed what fund it was in. It's almost like changing the money in your pockets. It doesn't really matter. You still have the money. So that's why the amount is 0. But if you look at the fund graph, you can see that my building fund went down $1,000 and my general fund went up $1,000. So that's how you can transfer money in between your funds. Okay, so that's journal entry. Again, if you're a little bit more curious about the nuts and bolts of accounting and how to use this screen, then find that webinar that we've got specifically on this screen, and we'd be happy to tell you. So let's move on to accounts payable. Now, accounts payable and receivable, again, are kind of the two additional apps that you can enable here from the advanced settings section. They don't cost you anything. It's just we don't turn them on by default. And accounts payable is kind of like the middleman for any amount that you owe but haven't paid yet. Okay, so for instance, let's say somebody comes out to your property and does some plumbing work, and once they're done, they leave and they send you an invoice for $1,000, saying we performed work on this, that, and the other thing. You now owe us $1,000. Well, that's money that you owe, and you want to record that you now owe that person, but you're not quite ready to pay yet. Maybe there's, some finishing touches you're waiting for them to do, or you're just waiting until the end, or for whatever reason, you're delaying payment. So accounts payable is a screen that can help you manage the money that you owe, but just haven't paid yet. It's like a middleman for your expenses. Now, what this is not used for is your normal monthly expenses. So rent, utilities, um, any subscriptions that you are a part of. Accounts payable is not necessarily for that because those happen on a more regular basis. You just enter them in your register whenever you get the bill and you're done. Accounts payable, I would recommend, is if you're going to wait for payment for over 30 days, then accounts payable becomes more usable. Okay, so on the screen, what you would do is enter a new bill, and then you can pay bills here at the bottom. And this screen is kind of broken up into 3 sections. The first here is kind of an overview saying how much total you have due, which for me is nothing yet. And then you have the enter a new bill section right there, where you can enter a new payable, and then you can pay bills here down at the bottom. So let's go ahead and enter a test here. So let's say I'm going to pay my plumber. He came out and he did some work on the sprinklers and toilets. So there you go. So there's my memo. The reference number is typically when they give you an invoice, they have some sort of invoice number there. So I'm going to type that in. And the bill date was back on the 19th. And then this was due within 60 days of me getting that bill. So there's my due date. And the amount is $1,000. Okay. So there's that. So this top portion is you recording who do I owe and why and how much. Now below that is where you pick what expense this is going to hit. So let's see, I'm going to scroll down here through my expense accounts, and I'm going to say that this is for, let's see, what would apply here? I'll go ahead and do, let's just do like landscaping or something, okay? So I'm going to pick that expense account. I'm going to pick what fund this is coming out of, so my building fund. And then I can pick a percentage and amount. Now, this becomes important if this is the only expense account that you want to hit for this bill, then this would be 100%, and then this would be $1,000, whatever the total amount owed is. You also can split this if you'd like. And what this does is it adds a movement so that you can split the total $1,000 payment up among multiple expense accounts. So if I wanted to do that, I can. For today, I'm not going to do that. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that line there. Whatever, just leave it there. And then I'll go ahead and enter 100%. And there's the amount, and then click submit. Oops, it's yelling at me. There we go. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so there's my one line. There's 100% amount, submit. Now that transaction gets saved down here. You can see my total due is now $1,000. And if I scroll all the way at the bottom, I can see under my pay bills section what bills I owe, and then I can choose to pay it here. So let's say if I wanted to pay $200 now, and this was paid as of the 28th, and then I would hit pay bills, and you can also pay bills and print checks if you have check printing enabled, but then go ahead and pay bills. So what that does is it now pays $200 out of whatever cash account was selected here, so my checking account. The total that I still owe is $800, so I still owe that person $800. But now if I go over to my register, I can see that that $200 right there was now paid to my plumber. Okay, so there's accounts payable. Accounts receivable is very, very similar to accounts payable, but instead of the money that you owe, this is money that is owed to you from someone else for whatever reason. And again, this is not a a regular donation or something. This would be more of like if someone ordered t-shirts or something from you and you now send them an invoice for saying you owe me $100 for t-shirts, that would be the example of an accounts receivable. So to use our example earlier for the plumber, we owed the plumber. For us, it's a payable because since we owe the plumber. For the plumber, that's a receivable because it's us owing him. Does that make sense? So that's receivable. So it works the same way as payable. All you would do is enter a new invoice. You'd enter who owes you, why, what's the due date, what's the amount, and then what income account you want that to hit since it's money coming in for you. And you can split this as well. And then submit. And then down here in the receive payments section, you can choose to receive however much you've gotten. So like I paid the plumber $200 out of the $1,000, he would receive $200 out of the $1,000 receivable to him, receive payment, and then that will go into your register. So accounts payable is kind of the middleman for money that you owe but haven't paid yet. Accounts receivable is kind of the middleman for money that is owed to you but you haven't received yet. Okay. So there are our 4 screens for transaction entry: accounts receivable, accounts payable, journal entry, and the register. Almost 99% of your time is going to be spent in the register here, since that impacts kind of a more daily basis checking balance for you. And some other things that I do want to mention real quick here in the register are these little sub tabs here: bank integration, bank reconciliation, and check printing. Now, these can also be enabled or disabled from the advanced settings section. But bank integration allows you to link your actual bank with Aplos so that you can download transactions, which saves you time and data entry. It's not necessary, but it's just kind of a time-saving tool. And we have a webinar that goes over that, so that's available for you if you'd like. And then we have bank reconciliation, which we also have a webinar for if you're curious. But this whole process now makes you compare your bank statement with the information that's entered in Aplos. So that way, as of a certain date, you know that my bank and Aplos are accurate when compared with one another. So that means there's no variances. And so that way you can feel confident that your accounting system is up to date and accurate. Okay, so that's bank reconciliation. And then check printing allows you to print any payment that has been entered in the register or any bill that's owed in accounts payable. Now, you will need a certain style of check here, the draft or voucher format. And if you need to buy checks, go ahead and click this little link here, and that'll take you to our check provider, so where you can buy some checks. But once you have those checks handy, then all you would do is click what transactions you want to print, like so, and then you enter the starting check number. You can also enter their address and stuff right from the screen, mess with the print margins, and then hit print. And then that will then generate a PDF to where then you can print on those checks that you already have, and that way you don't have to handwrite everything. Okay? All right, well, that's transactions. So thanks for showing up today. Again, this is kind of it's kind of the second part in a 3-part series of showing you how to use an accounting system. The first is how to set up accounts and what that means. And then today was how to use those accounts in transactions. Next is how to pull reports based on the information that we've entered here, and then some other stuff that you can do with the software. So if you want to complete the course, then feel free to check out that reports webinar as well. But until then, thanks for using Aplos, and let us know if you need help with anything. Take care.